They took the elevator up to C deck. Once there, they headed back toward the main hall and the central staircase. It didn't take them long. Junpei found Seven and Lotus waiting for them. They didn't look happy.
We've got a problem.
Clover is gone!
Junpei and his three companions looked at one another. He turned back to Seven and Lotus.
What do you mean, gone?
Santa, Ace, and June had their own questions to ask.
Why?
You two went in door 1 with Clover, didn't you?
Seven and Lotus responded as best they could.
Yeah, we went through the door together.
But Clover barely spoke to us.
She did her own thing the whole time.
There were 4 rooms on the other side of door 1.
She wouldn't let us into the 4th room.
She just said, "I'll take care of this one."
And shut the door.
She must have blocked it with something on the other side.
We waited for a while, but Clover didn't come out.
We called for her, but she didn't answer.
So I kicked down the door and we went into the room.
But
It was empty.
Clover wasn't there.
There was a door on the other wall.
And it was open.
We figured she opened the door and let it by herself.
We ran after her, of course, but
Well, obviously we didn't find her. You figured out that much.
Clover's gone.
Junpei thought for a moment.
When did this happen?
We got here just before you.
You certainly have excellent timing.
So you haven't searched anywhere other than near the staircase?
No, we haven't.
Finally, Ace spoke. His voice had an edge of resolve and concern.
Very well then. We'd best separate and look for Clover. We haven't much time left. Let's begin.
There were quick nods all around, and the 6 remaining players spread out. Junpei and June ran into the central hospital room and looked around.
She's not here.
No, she isn't.
They searched a little longer, but with no luck. They couldn't find Clover. Finally, they gave up and left the central hospital room. Slowly, they made their way back to the hallway. At last, they reached the stairs, and Junpei spoke.
Alright, I'm thinking we should probably split up. I'll head back to the stairs and take the elevator down to E deck. June, you can take the stairs up to B deck.
Alright, that sounds good. But,
What?
could you stop calling me by that code name when we're alone?
Huh? Oh, sure, right. I'll do that.
There was a reason Junpei persisted in calling her June even when they were alone. Although, perhaps not the best reason. He was embarrassed to call her by the nickname he'd used when they were children. Connie. 9 years ago, it came naturally. After all, they were children. But now that they were adults, it felt strange. Regardless of what he might hope for, to call a woman he wasn't dating by such a childish nickname felt odd to him. Of course, to call her Miss Kurashiki would be even more awkward, and simply Kurashiki would seem a little brusque. And although he couldn't put his finger on why, it felt somewhat forward to call her Akane when they hadn't seen one another for so long. In short, it was simply easier for him to call her June and leave it at that.
Alright, I'm going then.
Yeah, be careful. Connie.
June, or perhaps more appropriately Connie, blushed and smiled.
You be careful too, Junpei.
Yeah, got it. Take care.
Junpei looked after her for a moment as she ran up the stairs, then turned around and took off for the hallway. Tragedy always strikes when one least expects it. But to wait for a man to stand before striking him down almost seems crueler than dealing the fatal blow while he lies on the ground. A light in a dark place. June's smile had given him hope, both for escape and possibly for something else. It was that hope that raised his spirits just enough that they might soon be fully dashed. He opened the elevator door, and there she was. A woman sat, slouched against the wall. Lotus. Junpei felt his blood turn to ice. Her body was limp, and her skin, smooth and pale as always, covered in bright red blood. Junpei felt his chest constrict. He couldn't breathe, and his legs began to shake. A slow, cold drop of sweat trickled down his back. He felt his stomach somersault. Junpei's mind went blank, all his thoughts replaced with endless hissing white. Driven by little more than instinct, he began to walk toward Lotus, slowly. Each slow movement of his stiff limbs brought him closer to her corpse. Finally, he stood next to her. Robotically, he bent down and put his hand against her neck. There was no pulse, no rise and fall of breathing. She was slightly warm. Something, somewhere in Junpei's shaken mind, told him that meant she had been killed recently. Yes, Junpei thought, his mind slowly returning. She had been killed. Someone had killed her. There was a deep cut on the left side of her chest. Blood still oozed from it, although clearly her heart had stopped beating some time ago. The weapon had been a knife then? Perhaps she had been stabbed in the heart. Once. She would have died immediately. He took little comfort from knowing she must have suffered very little. Only then did Junpei notice. Lotus's bracelet was gone.
Lastly, let us discuss how to remove the bracelets. There are only two ways to do so. 1. You escape from this ship. 2. Your heart rate reaches 0. In other words, once the bracelet is taken outside the confines of this ship, or detects the wearer's heartbeat has fallen to 0, it will shut down automatically.
Was that why the killer had ended Lotus's life? So that they might have the number 8 bracelet? If that was true, then the killer was whoever wanted the number 8 bracelet. Perhaps more accurately, the person who would gain the most by obtaining bracelet number 8. Who is that? Who would benefit the most from the number 8 bracelet? The thought had only just entered Junpei's mind when he heard a noise. A sound like a sharp knife cutting through wet meat. It struck him as strange that the noise came from inside his own body. A moment later, the pain hit him. It wasn't merely pain. There was heat. Extreme heat as well. He felt as though molten iron had been splashed against the side of his body. Finally, his brain made the connection. He had been stabbed. But where? His body was quickly going numb. He couldn't tell where the knife had met his flesh. Given the circumstances, however, he had most likely been stabbed in the back. Whoever had killed Lotus had now done the same to Junpei as well. His voice was little more than a weak groan. With what little strength he had left, Junpei turned his body, trying to catch a glimpse of his attacker. But as he did, the knife dug itself in deeper, twisting viciously. He collapsed to the floor, a puppet with its strings cut. His arms and legs lay where they fell, oddly twisted and awkwardly positioned. Junpei's body was entirely numb. He could feel the blood leaking out of him, but nothing would move. Nothing, save his eyes. As he lay on the floor, his life ebbing away, Junpei finally saw his attacker. two tiny images of the killer, reflected in his eyes. With that recognition came nothing. He felt no emotions, not anger, not sadness, not regret. The paralysis that had claimed his body had reached his mind. His killer glanced down at his body. Then, without a word, climbed into the elevator and was gone. His eyesight began to fade. The world grew blurry and began to dissolve into an endless white fog. The fog crept into the edges of his mind and worked inexorably forward. Soon, it swallowed up the last that remained of Junpei's mind, and his consciousness left him. There was nothing more. Into utter emptiness he fell, into zero. Whatever Junpei had been was gone.
Let's Start Project.